I'm happy here to introduce our next speaker, Lindi von Mutius. Lindi is the director of the Salata Institute Climate Action Accelerator. Actually, there is a little connection between Lindi and myself. Prior to Salata Institute, she was the director of the Sustainability Graduate Programs at the Harvard Extension School, which I recently just graduated from. Not only that, she was the first person in the program. And when I say first, she was the only person that joined the program, which eventually leads to hundreds and thousands of graduates. So with Lindi being the first director of the Climate Action Accelerator at the Salata Institute, I'm sure she would drive crucial and collaborative progress the institution demands. So please join me to welcome Lindi.
Thank you, Dinesh. What a great introduction. And you've short-circuited, in a good way, some of the introductory slide that I was going to share about myself, which is, yes, I'm also an alumna. And I am coming to you today, not just as a staff member of the Salata Institute and the director of the Climate Action Accelerator, but also as a dedicated alumna, really interested in this, and someone who has been very grateful for the existence of Harvard Alumni for Climate and Environment, and the work that our alumni have been pushing the university to do. So I'd love to share a little bit just about the work that I'm going to try to do and how I envision being able to engage alumni. But I'd really like to hear your feedback. So I'm going to keep my remarks quite brief. And what I'd really like to know are some of the questions that I have heard some answers to already in this meeting, which is, what can the Salata Institute do with alumni that would have the greatest impact? And I think that the Class Act survey has answered a couple of elements of that question, as did the poll just now. So I've been taking furious notes over here. We'd really like to leverage alumni expertise and networks. And I think you heard Sandy say that. And I will reinforce that, yes, we are incredibly dedicated at the Salata Institute and in our staff level conversations around figuring out how we can leverage alumni expertise. And that is specifically something that I'm really interested in. I'm about to tell you why. What can we do more for our alumni? And how can our alumni who are on opposite sides of climate change do to find common ground? How can you be agents of change and advocacy in the world among your classmates, your former classmates, who some of whom are actually quite renowned climate deniers and funders of think tanks and politicians and organizations that actively try to promote fossil fuels and promote the narrative of climate denial rather than advocate for it. And so that's something we've also been thinking about. How can we engage folks who may not agree with all of us on this call today and bring them into this tent? And then the last question is maybe one for you to reflect on, which is that after you hear the presentation I'm giving you today, maybe think about whether you'd be interested in serving as a little bit of a kitchen cabinet for the accelerator itself, because part of our mission speaks to you, and I'd be really interested in chatting with you. So as I said, I'm an alumna, and then I became the program director after a career in both corporate, nonprofit, and government, and really have loved working with students a lot, and loved seeing those students graduate and do amazing things like Dinesh and some of our other extension alumni on this call today. The extension school, which can sometimes be the redheaded stepchild of Harvard, affectionately known as that, has almost 2,000 graduates now from the sustainability program. And most of those people are working in corporate sustainability in pretty high level roles. So it's a really wonderful group of alumni to be connected to. And I'm really appreciative to see how they are involved and engaged in this organization as well. So I think they have an important voice. The sustainability program at the Extension School is the largest one at Harvard. and has almost 100 courses in different aspects of sustainability, and enrolls about 3,000 people a year across the different classes. So really a nice culture of lifelong learning going on there. And one of the things that I recently shared with the students when I talked with them about the Accelerator is a framework by another Harvard alumna, Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who you may have heard of already. She's got a really wonderful podcast, and she co-authored a book called All We Can Save, which looks at how we can engage with the climate crisis in a positive way. And one of her ideas is that there is something in the middle of the climate Venn diagram for all of us. And if you think about what brings you joy, what you genuinely love working on, and what you're good at, and you then ask, what is the climate work that needs doing? You can find an answer in the middle of that Venn diagram, whether it be advocacy, investing, lobbying, engaging as a mentor with other climate practitioners and students at Harvard. I bet you have an answer. And when I asked the students what should be at the center of Harvard's climate Venn diagram, I said to them, the answer to that question is what certainly drives the Accelerator's work. And a lot of them put education at the center of that. So it's interesting to see the difference between their response and yours in your moonshot challenges. So the Accelerator essentially takes the great ideas from various parts of Harvard and tries to translate it to action in the world externally outside of Harvard. And if you think of the Salata Institute having 3 essential pillars, the first pillar is education. So the Salata Institute has been very actively engaged in thinking about creating a dedicated master's program for all the schools to share in climate and sustainability, and sort of advancing the educational goals on climate at Harvard writ large. So there's a lot of work happening around education and curriculum development, faculty hiring. All of that work fits under the education pillar. There's a second pillar, engagement. And the engagement pillar is really all about calls like this and working with students, working with faculty to figure out how we can help support research in climate and sustainability. It's also thinking about how we can take what's valuable and good at Harvard and bring it to external audiences. And so the Accelerator lives in part in that engagement pillar. And then we live very much in the third pillar, which is research. So the research pillar for the Salata Institute is essentially cultivating research expertise within Harvard among its faculty, but also among the students and some of the other sort of postdoc researchers within the university, to really focus more on climate solutions and thinking about how those solutions can translate externally into real action. So the Climate Action Accelerator really lives in the research and the engagement pillars. And a lot of the work that I've been trying to get started in the 6 weeks that I've been the director has been focused around making sure that we are putting a strategy together and events together that help bring that research and connect it to external stakeholders. So I wanted to give you all a couple of examples of how I've been thinking through what we should focus on, because it's a big set of topics and there's a lot of good work being done. So these are the 4 things I think about when I evaluate, should we move forward and prioritize a project? We really want to make sure that the work we do at the Accelerator allows Harvard to have the greatest impact in the world. So we don't want to just simply copy what Stanford is doing and do more of it. We want to have a unique and valuable impact. We think the university can do that. And we think that our resources and the assets that we have, including our alumni, can add real value in this space. So I try to do a lot of thinking about, is this just a derivative project, or is this something where we can add unique leadership as an institution? I also prioritize work that creates long-term systemic change. I was really happy to hear you mention equity, Elizabeth and Sandy, in your presentation, because as somebody who's worked in environmental justice for much of my career, equity really is something that I think about in terms of the systemic and lasting change component of deciding what we should prioritize. And I want that to guide our work as well throughout. I also think about what the solution is and if it's scalable. I had an argument the other day with one of my colleagues about the word scalable and how it's misused all the time because what it really means is like Mount Everest is scalable. But I'm using it here in the context that is not in Webster's dictionary, which is, can the solution be scaled? Can it be applied in a wide range of problems? It's, of course, very important for us to think about some very niche solutions as well. But I think it's more important for us to focus on how the research we put out and connect with external partners can have a big impact. And then finally, what is our capacity? So right now I have launched a search for the first employee of the Accelerator. Soon, I believe in another week or so, we'll be posting a second job. So we are staffing up quickly, but right now our capacity is limited. And so we need to lean on our partners a little more as we get things going. So that's how I've been thinking about our work. Hopefully that wasn't too in the weeds for you in terms of the peek behind the strategic planning curtain, but sometimes I think it's helpful to explain the how we do the work, not just the why. And when I tried to translate that into some concrete examples for you all of what we're actually doing, these 4 things come to sort of the top of the list. So a big goal of mine is to convene brilliant people, and that includes alumni, around issues where Harvard leads. So for example, convening the faculty who are working on environmental justice, but who live in those silos that you all were just mentioning that make it impossible for us to actually talk to each other. And it sounds crazy to think that a bunch of really smart people at Harvard can't do that. But it turns out we have more silos than Iowa, to quote Dr. Dustin Tingley. So invoking Dustin Tingley, he just wrote a really great book on how to more effectively roll out the just transition specifically in deep red states. And so what I'm working on now is putting together a mini half-day conference for the top 25 environmental nonprofits and their just transition policy directors, as well as a couple of staffers from Capitol Hill, to meet with Dr. Tingley and to learn about these strategies and the research that they're based on, but also to talk with each other. And so I'm casting a very wide net and bringing in conservative groups that work on just transition, as well as more liberal left of center groups. So I'm hoping that this is an opportunity where Harvard can really create a dialogue that hasn't been missing and connections that can help implement these solutions in a more thoughtful, research-based way. We've also been starting some collaborations with other organizations that are trying to work on things adjacent to the research clusters that the Salata Institute began last year. And so one example of that is collaborating with EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund's Net Zero Accelerator, and the work that our Net Zero Research Cluster is doing, so that we don't do the same work in our own little silos, but we work together so that we can kind of leapfrog over some of the issues and actually do a little more work. So adding capacity to existing work that's out there is certainly something that I've been thinking about. And then amplifying Harvard scholarship. So I'm in charge now of the symposium, the climate symposium, which will happen next June here on campus again. If for those of you who attended or were part of the symposium this year, sorry, I keep thinking last year, but really last semester in May of this year, you'll remember it was a really great opportunity to bring a lot of important people to campus to talk about kicking off this work. And so this next year, we're going to focus on the theme of what happens after the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, which kicked off a ton of incentives, financial incentives, tax credits, and investments in renewable energy and adaptation and climate mitigation. But the United States is still not meeting its climate targets. And so we've got to keep being more ambitious and we've got to do better. And so this symposium is going to ask, what can we do? And I'm very eager to bring alumni into this conversation who are in that space as practitioners. So if that's you or you know somebody who I should be reaching out to, please let me know and don't be shy. Because I think it's really important for us to involve alumni in the amplification of Harvard's work. And so that is my brief presentation. I'm super interested to hear your questions and comments. with the little time that we have. And Danny and Dinesh, thank you for inviting me, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Lindy. This is Matt Haggerty. Thank you very much. That was very inspiring as well as informative. And thank you for your work in Salata. So I'm going to open it up to our audience. Do you have any immediate questions for Lindy that we could address now? So Lindy, I could start. I think there's going to be a conference coming up in December. Could you give us some details on that, please?
Oh, in December. Okay, what I know about happening in December is the Career Expo. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I was like, there's a conference? Oh no, I don't know. Okay, we're on the same page. So we are doing the first ever Harvard-wide Career Expo for the Salata Institute. And the goal is to bring in employers to campus to not only be there for students to meet them and hear about climate careers, but also to actually talk about, maybe be on panels and have a conversation around what climate careers are like. And I'll be super transparent with all of you that we at the staff level in the Salata Institute have been kind of shocked by how few companies have signed up. We have 50 companies. Great, that was our goal. We were thinking we might shoot over that goal. And so one of the things I think we need to do differently is engage our alumni a little more who are working in climate and environment to bring their companies to career expos like this. We were relying mainly on the schools to bring their employers and on the schools' career offices. And it turns out that the schools are not as willing to share those connections, or they have different recruitment processes in place. So like the law school has a very specific recruitment process. So did mine, right? I mean, law schools are very, medical schools same, and business schools same. So it was challenging actually to bring all of those people in alignment for a career expo. But we have pulled off the first attempt, and we're hoping that the second attempt will be more robust. So if you would like to have your employer be part of that career expo, I'm going to put my colleague's email in the chat here. Her name is Leslie Hubbard, and I encourage you to reach out to her and let her know if we've missed you, because it would be really terrific to have you and your employer in the expo. But that's not the only option. I'll also say Leslie has been putting together these alumni networking events where students at the university from any part of the university can hear from a variety of alumni what their careers are like. And that's been really well attended by the students and really popular and really exciting to the students. So I actually think those smaller forums might be what we end up putting more of our energy towards rather than a broad expo, because it seems more valuable to the students as an experience. So if you're also really interested in maybe in that mentoring or sort of sharing how your career journey has been informed, also reach out to Leslie, because I think she would be really eager to have you at one of those alumni gatherings.
Excellent. Thanks, Lindy. Glad to support that upcoming Career Expo. We have a question from the audience, Jennifer Feller. Jennifer, please feel free to ask your question.
Hi, everyone. I'm in my car. Forgive me, but I am pulled over.
No problem.
And I'm on my way actually from a climate conference with the Massachusetts Teachers Association, Climate Action Network. And I'm a graduate of the education school. And so I attended the first symposia, and I was great, but there was no one, as far as I could tell from education, or very few. It was a lot of business and public policy, which was great. But I would love to see more public health and education and more of a focus on climate justice. And I wondered, I guess, if there's what the Salata Institute is doing to engage with our education, not so much higher education, but K-12 education is my specific interest. And there may be no answer yet, but I would hope that there certainly are plenty of alum who could engage with that. So it's not a very directed question, but just kind of a topic that I wanted to bring up and see where you are with that.
No, I am really grateful that you brought this up. I will say when they interviewed me for the job, I had 2 days back to back of like 8 to like, 4 p.m. interviews. It was like 18 different faculty that I met as part of the interview process. And one of them was the dean of the ed school. And that was one of my favorite interviews because I used to work at the Trust for Public Land with the Green Schoolyards campaign. And that was actually featured in the ed school's day 2 climate symposium exhibition last year. And I said to her, I said, the power of K through 12 schools around this country to be leaders in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate education is boundless. And so I'm really, really excited to start working with her. Her response was, you're right. And many of our faculty don't even know that they can contribute to the climate space. They haven't thought it through, and they haven't seen the connections between their work and climate change and sort of broadening the school's impact in positive impact potentially in the climate field. And so one of my tasks with the ed school is really to think about creating a couple of partnerships and thought leadership like convenings where I can actually illustrate a little more clearly what that connection looks like between school systems and there's school systems in California that are leading the way on solar, right? There's school districts in New York City that are creating microgrids and actually providing key climate resilience for New Yorkers around hurricanes and flooding that have been really, actually, we've seen them work after Sandy. So there's a lot of potential that I think even a focus on that curriculum. And I'd love to talk to you a little more and anyone else in the practitioner space, because I think this is a clear example where what practitioners are doing, especially alumni practitioners, can actually positively feed back into the research that Harvard faculty are working on. And that's a key part of my mission, is not just Harvard to the outside world, but the outside world helping to inform research. And so next year's symposium will really focus a couple of the sessions much more on how can external practitioners inform the work that Harvard is doing, as well as that how can we bring solutions to the external world perspective. So I will definitely want to talk to you more, but that's a great question, both in terms of the big picture policy and sort of way I like to work, and also just I think generally on education and the power of schools to make change, especially in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Jennifer, and Lindy, thank you for that enthusiastic response. We have a question from the audience here, and I will speak on behalf of Anab Mahood, who asked about the need for a platform to engage alumni based on their interests and engagements. So is there a resource at Salata where research work and project initiatives can be supported?
Yeah, that's another really great question. So that is something we are working on creating right now. So I like to remind people the Salata Institute is 1 year and 10 days old. And so we're still taking our baby steps. We've done a lot in that year, but it's definitely, there's so much more we could do. And one of the things that we actually need to do that hasn't been done really well is mapping where all the faculty research actually is. So we know the big picture stuff, but we don't know what some of the other faculty are working on and how that could possibly connect to what alumni are doing. And then we definitely need to do more to create an alumni resource directory around specific topics and issues. So that's something that I've been talking with George, the ED of the Salata Institute, and our team a little more about how can we both do the faculty resource mapping and the alumni resource mapping. So that is something I'm hoping that the person I hire next will actually take on as a project. We'll be working with Danny and all of you to kind of start creating that map. So we have something that lives in addition to the great LinkedIn group as a way to say, we're going to have a convening in DC on transportation. and energy efficiency in the transportation sector. Who do we know that works on that as an alum, and who can we bring in to share their work with policymakers on that? So that's a good example of where I need to know who those alumni are, and we're going to work on a system to figure that out. In terms of supporting alumni research, right now we're kind of focusing our support on faculty research. So we created those research clusters to bring faculty together. The goal of the funding is that we break silos down. So we are funding projects specifically where there are researchers from 3 or more Harvard schools coming together to work on an issue collectively, which is a challenge. So that's right now where the research funding priority has been. That could change, but that's been where the current sort of our vision for prioritizing research is. We also funded a couple of Salata Radcliffe Fellows on climate justice because we felt that that was an area where we didn't have the faculty expertise. So bringing some of those thought leaders to campus. And in case you missed it, on Wednesday, I hosted one of the Radcliffe sessions. I believe they're all on the Radcliffe page. So you can hear and see what the other Salata Justice Fellows are doing. But I hope that's a high-level answer to this very important question. I hope that makes sense.
Well done.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Anab. Thank you, Lindy. And one more quick question. This is from Tony Reck, who states that many municipalities are looking for sustainability directors and coordinators. Maybe this Salata that would be a great resource for them to find those candidates. Is there a way to advertise to the city leaders, maybe through, for example, a council for mayors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we are definitely trying to figure out how to better network with city leaders and sustainability directors. Ironically, this was actually something I did a lot when I was at the extension school, because we have 13 major city sustainability directors who are also extension school alumni. So I think this is an area where you all as alumni can even play a leadership role. But right now, George and I have been thinking about how we can work with the Bloomberg City Initiative. So not to reinvent the wheel, but think about how we can increase the capacity there a little bit. I've also been talking with and now I'm going to totally blank on the name. Oh my goodness. It's basically the Sustainability Directors Network, USDN, Urban Sustainability Directors Network, about how we can complement some of what they're doing. They're a very specific organization, so finding that common ground, I think, might be a challenge, but I'm very excited to think about how we can actually provide resources, or at least convening capacity to that group of professionals, because I think that it's a place where we can be leaders. I also am working with right now, looking at the city of Boston and city of Cambridge potential collaboration with some of the work that the iLab is doing, the Innovation Lab, to maybe think about creating a hub of climate innovation in Boston. There's some really good work, and I think if we add some capacity to that work, we can grow it, and we can have it be something that Harvard drives and leads. So that's a sort of slightly broader answer, but great question.
Oh, that's terrific, Lindy. And I like the idea of getting, all politics is local, right? So getting Harvard involved with Boston and Cambridge is a great first step. So thank you. It was really a revealing 25 or so minutes, and thank you for your time.